This is my presentation on concentric ring theory. I know the reading kind of went over it, so we're just going to review and then try to apply what we've learned to a cool little activity that hopefully we'll have the paper too. So this is the concentric zone model, kind of like a graphic representation of it here. Basically, what it is it was developed by a guy named Ernest Burgess in the 1920s about Chicago, and it's kind of a theoretical way of looking at cities and how they organize. Basically saying that the city will kind of organize around a central business district, and then have these sort of patterns of what the zones are like closer to that, and then as you get further away, it becomes more residential. So right here we have the central business district, where I think that's where all the big kind of economy is. Then there's the zone of transition, which is factories and some housing. Independent workers' homes, which is blue collar a little bit. The better residences, the more like residential parts of the city. And then the commuter zone, which is the suburbs. So it's just kind of a way that's very unique to American cities, where, you know, the big, there's the inner city and then the rich suburbs, which is not the case usually. Here's another like more plain way of looking at it with some bullet points, but just going to go over each model and take notes on each one. So the central business district kind of usually looks somewhat like this. It's got all the big kind of companies, white collar things, and this is usually not always at the geographic center of the city, but the whole key to concentric zone model is that the city is organized around it. So it will probably follow the pattern of having, you know, some more industrial places closer to it. So that's the factory zone. Usually like more blue collar or industrial companies. The factory zone is also called the zone of transition, and it includes some housing, like mixed use buildings, typically not as nice, but like these areas do kind of get gentrified a lot. Then once you go out, you have the working class zone. Oh yeah.
Sorry, can you go back to the last slide?
Yeah.
A little bit fast.
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay, cool. I'm good.
Okay. Then the next ring is the working class zone, which is typically more residential for more blue collar workers, working class families. Yeah, this is obviously typically it will have like businesses and stuff, but it gets out of the more commercial thing and it becomes residential. Usually after that, there's a residential zone, which is typically, you know, nicer, more affluent homes. This is still kind of within the city limits, but it starts to feel like the suburbs, which obviously that's the commuter zone. That's where a lot of people who probably work in the center, in the central business district, will live with their families. We saw with Katie's presentation, like how people kind of, there was white flight to the suburbs because they could afford that. So we do see like a demographic here usually. Yeah, so I kind of want you guys to apply the knowledge of the Bay Area a little bit and try to organize these maps based on this model and see if it lines up, see if it doesn't. I know this also applies to Adam's zoning presentation. So we have 5 here. So that's, yeah.
Is this model only for cities, or could it be like for the entire Bay Area?
I mean, it could be for the Bay Area, like with San Francisco as the central.
Okay.
I assume, I don't have a ton of knowledge about like Oakland or San Jose, but you could probably organize Oakland or San Jose like this. So these maps might not work, so if you guys just want to do San Francisco too, like write it out, like some neighborhoods that you think would fall in different zones, that would be Nina?
Also, are there like, I don't know if you answered this, but are there like multiple within a city, or is it kind of just one place? And it's
The
like
theory, in theory, it's kind of like one place. Obviously, it's not always as like geographically perfect as this is. But in theory, it does kind of follow the same thing.
Yeah, theoretically, for a city, it
Yes.
would be something like that. Now, there are a lot of assumptions that you're making about that particular city. What are some assumptions that you're making when you're looking at this particular region of development? So perfect circle. What else?
No water.
That it is a city, like, you know,
What?
you know.
Well, that it is a city, right?
No, but I feel like not all cities have like a very like populated like downtown area. Like, if you go into like the middle of America, I don't know if this is applied. If you feel.
Yeah,
I mean, still, even if it doesn't look like this, I think everywhere kind of has a downtown that is like a lot of the businesses in like the center of the city, whether
Why?
that's skyscrapers or like a few shops. Yeah.
Why does it look like a circle?
Because it's meant to represent like the smaller, it's like smaller area versus like, you know, population.
Yeah, but like, why not an oval? Why not like why not a square with like,
Because there's
you know,
equal parts per zone. So how we do it like development? I feel like the circle kind of like indicates that it's like the whole city started with like a financial zone and then expanded out over time.
and so one of the assumptions you're making is that you can expand in all directions,
Oh,
right? I mean, like, that sounds like an obvious. It's almost obvious, but like, in order for that thing to happen, you need to be able to expand in all directions equally. Which, if you're in San Francisco, that is a complicated statement, right? Or if you're in Oakland, or if you're in San Jose, or if you are in, right?
Or even in New York.
And actually, interestingly enough, this model was devised in Chicago. Chicago's on the lake. Half of the city can develop on the lake because there's the lake, right? So
Never
you-
say
The
never.
Aztecs would disagree with you on that.
so anyway, that's interesting to think about. Yeah.
Hey, doesn't the model change if you like a city next to a body of water? Because then wouldn't the factors be on the outside
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
ring?
No, yeah, it can definitely, it's not perfect, it definitely doesn't usually look like this, and it adapts to like different geographical features like that.
And you can have like overlapping bullseyes, right?
Yeah.
So San Francisco develops, San Jose develops, and where they intersect, then it gets complicated. So
Kind of the commuter zone
Yeah.
for both is where I put it, but that's up to you. I'd also encourage you guys to think about where you live and where you might put it, where you think it might fall in according to this model,
mhm.
and like what you think that feels like. So if we have 5, how many groups?
Yeah, 5, that's 5 groups, right? So
Yeah.
3 per group.
Okay, so how about we just do it by like where you're sitting, so you 3,
We'll check what we're doing, so, yeah.
Is there a tutorial site?
Sorry, what?
Is there a tutorial site?
Yeah, it's like.
I believe so. Look.
No, I'm just
Wait, are
wondering
we
if
in
there's
teams?
like.
Yeah.
Are we all, okay.
And
I-
you can like write
I mean, I
down
always-
notes.
I always assume that.
Whatever comes to your mind.
Okay.
I always assume this.
Alright.
I think the suburbs. This would be like a middle. So
Just like write down
one.
notes.
What is the center? And then
Whatever comes to
it
your
goes
mind.
pretty like, it goes transition.
You want another map?
Yeah, it's mainly, I think the center is where downtown is.
I feel like that's a little bit far. Because once you're getting into here, that's like the marina and Patrick. And I don't think I would call that the center.
I think the ring goes actually more
It's
like,
like all residential.
It's residential.
Sorry, that's your.
It's like an awkward
Like,
calculation.
this is the Presidio, and then this is like Golden Gate.
Okay.
It's not global, is it?
If it's like here
the
is like the center, and then here's like low key no center. Like I feel like it's like this.
I think it's on the edge because this is like the line.
Oh, true, like that.
Yeah, and like this is down south.
And then this is more of the transition center because it's like.
But then it's okay. So if you have the Presidio here, and then there's like Golden Gate Park. And this is like Pack Heights Marina area, and then here's like Diviz, Castro. Like I think it actually goes like you don't have a ring here. I think like the ring like kind of goes like it's like warped.
That's the transition or the second ring.
Like the suburbs.
Or I guess the second ring would be like
I think the second, yeah, I agree. I think the second ring would go down, like, because this is like,
Yeah.
kind of like the Soma area, and then this is where like a lot of the housing is, like the apartments.
oh wait, this is Nob Hill, right?
But I mean, if we're trying to apply the theory, then isn't it like perfect kind of examples?
No,
don't
we're
think so,
trying to
because
apply the model to SF, and SF doesn't really fit.
This is like wealthier area.
Suburb area, like
What's over here?
what's the name of that? It's like I don't know. There's wealth along the line, and then there's kind of less.
No, but then wealth also grows here.
Yeah.
Oh, Seacliff. That's like hella.
Yeah.
Right? So then here this includes like Western Addition, Nob Hill,
This would probably be residential.
down to
though.
Bayview. This is residential.
Yeah. So that's the
So
fourth.
we can make
it's like
this
third.
residential.
Santa Clara?
Then this is like
No, like
the
Centennial.
what's the CBD is
Belmont.
what they call it. Right?
Yeah. So
Belmont,
this is the
African,
African.
Melpark
Melpark,
are
View.
all like, yeah, those
And
are
then we
definitely
have
like
this.
That would be.
San Francisco also gets.
I think in
more
between,
like
like here,
that-
like this
that
area, maybe
is
like
becoming,
around it,
like, huge.
would be the transition
And
zone.
you get
Like,
reverse commuter.
Yeah,
because there isn't really a transition zone.
I think I don't think it would go as far as to
Yeah.
here, because I isn't Nob Hill pretty like expensive.
It's like getting
Or it's like nicer. It's like it's nicer than here.
There are like a lot of apartments and a lot of the
Because that's
houses
where also kind of where
a little
like
bit.
Stanford
And then like here, you know like where Diviz is? Like
Yeah.
I feel like that's a little bit
comparing it
more
really to like my area
like
of San Francisco, it's like
I feel like
I
that.
don't know if they would be called
Definitely, like-
Yeah, not blue collar.
Like
This would be the third ring.
Oh yeah. So this is the second ring.
Yeah.
And then this is the third
Daly City
ring.
is
Yeah, or
definitely
maybe if we even extend
And then I think the fourth ring would be like
Yeah.
here, like that.
so it
Twin Peaks.
And then I think this
Wait, what's this part?
This is Mission.
Mission. Okay, so I think this is like the fourth ring.
Which is wait, what's the fourth ring?
The fourth ring is the wealth.
there's nothing. Residential.
There's only 5 rings.
Single family homes, yards, and garages. Man.
So this this is all residential.
and then
Which is this.
Yeah.
But then what about the extra like the
No, I meant like nothing there in terms of like why would you want to go to Athens?
Paradise is like sandwiched between two like lower.
Oh no, I meant like just to visit.
it's like
and we'll also
There's not a lot of like recreation. Like if you have a
and then Mission is
but like I would just go to
Mission is like
Athens.
also like the second ring.
yeah, so yeah, blue can be second.
house and then their house like right away.
We go like this.
I thought I said
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying, there's like multiple.
yeah, that's what yeah.
There's an assignment for
And then
there's an
it's like,
assignment for
what is this again? Oh, this is and then we go here, this is also residential.
Yeah,
Are there 2 types of residential?
I think it's like
No, you could definitely treat Santa
Jared,
as-
are there 2 types of residential?
Yeah, there's working class residential, and then like more.
I think commuters probably
I
like
think
down
this
here.
would be like the working class.
it's like here.
Yeah.
Because then when it goes up to
Yeah, this would probably be the working class.
and then like Palo Alto is like
Like that? So I guess where the ends here.
Or like and then anywhere outside.
What's that would be commuter zone?
Literally anywhere outside of the commuter zone.
What do you think like Noy Valley Twin Peaks area would be? It's more residential.
Yeah.
That's all residential.
Yeah, and then like, so you got like,
Okay, we can use this one as our map.
And then here is more.
this is the one, and then really
Is this working class here?
I think so. That's not bad.
This is like Ingleside or whatever. So this is more like
yeah,
this,
because
right?
Commercial.
I want to say, because I'm kind of confused within
This and then we go like this, and then this is all commuter.
Yeah. And then like if you cross the bridge and that these areas would kind of be kind of their own zones, but also
maybe
community.
this points to which one.
I feel like the parks are commuter zones. Like no one lives there.
I don't know.
And then
Yeah.
So like this is
District or residential.
this is
They're not really.
what was this again? This was the second working.
Or transition.
this is a four for sure. That's like
Oh, transition. Wait, what?
and then like
Oh yeah, I'm doing it like that too.
I don't know. I think it's like a
This
regular.
is
Okay, do you guys think you're like about done?
Wait, what was this one?
Okay, so,
I mean maybe this is
Oh, that was working.
transition.
This
This
is-
is working.
now we're just gonna have like a discussion, or you guys can compare. What did you all notice? Do you think it really followed the?
No.
No.
Doesn't?
No.
How so? Yeah.
It was just to Nick Fisman's point about not being able to live on water. I think we saw that specifically in the downtown and transitional area. We wanted to put the transitional area in more like dog patch or trail hill, but if it were following a more concentric model, it'd be more like. I feel like it was like a half circle like that. It's like a moon.
Did you all try just focus on San Francisco, or like try to treat Oakland and San Jose, or like the areas? Yeah.
We kind of did the same thing with Oakland, so we, in San Francisco, like the number one thing of the ring would be the financial district. And like
Yeah.
they said you can't move off the ring into the water. And I feel like the same thing's happening in Oakland, where like their port cities act as like the main, or the things along the port act as like their main center of their city, and you can't expand in water too. But
Yeah.
they're kind of similar.
But that's interesting, right? Because think about the map that Katie showed just 10 minutes ago about where Oakland was redlined. And Oakland was and I mean, you're not gonna redline your financial district. Like, that's just not gonna happen, right? Because by definition, your financial district is all the upper class,
Businessmen.
white
Yeah.
business, white collar, you know. So, where was all the redlining in Oakland? In the port.
And the
And
industrial.
the water, right?
Um,
So it's interesting to think about, I mean, was that in fact, you know, does the develop, I mean, I don't know anything about Oakland, I never go there, but does it make sense, does that model of Oakland match this concentric ring theory thing? And I don't have an answer, I'm just,
Yeah, Nicola brought up a good point about like overlapping bullseyes in the Bay Area with kind of three major cities. Like obviously you can treat it very San Francisco centric, but if you don't, like you have three of these models kind of overlapping to some extent. Also with how San Francisco's, the Bay Area's economy and like business has developed, you get a weird reverse commuter theory where often all the big companies are now in the suburbs in the commuter zone, and you know, people are living here to work in Atherton or in Santa Clara, just down in Silicon Valley. So this model's pretty outdated in some places as we evolve and change our
So when we were trying to do this, we took into account the Presidio and Golden Gate Park, so that kind of made it like a weird ring, like it would go like that. And then we kind of called the Presidio and Golden Gate Park like a little commuter zone because no one lives there really, but people have to travel through the parks to get to their work and back to their homes.
Also, I think that for the people who do live in the Presidio, it's like a little bit of both, like both commuter and residential. So that's kind of where it became this gray area of the two.
definitely.
also just how like there are little patches of the CBD, like the center kind of scattered like other places in San Francisco, so it's very hard. And I guess that kind of connects back to my question about how like if it's possible to have multiple kind of rings in a city.
Yeah, I mean, I think the CBD is really like the whole darkest blue over here, like the whole financial district. And then I can think of like all the places with a bunch of businesses is kind of like the either the zone of transition or something, something like that. Like I think the CBD is very defined, but you could argue that it's definitely a little scattered. But it's just interesting to see how this whole city organizes around that. What did you all think of like where you live? Where do you think that falls into?
Suburbs, straight up.
Yeah. I live in Pack Heights, which is definitely like a residential zone. But I don't know. I think this is a really cool way of kind of seeing how cities theoretically develop, and it's not always similar to in 2019 how they actually do.
Can you think about some factors that would distort the concentric ring theory model? Yeah.
Gentrification.
In what way?
In like how like investors will go into neighborhoods and like see potential and like try to make it a more like desirable place to live when maybe originally it was more like working class. Like I see that a lot with the Mission in terms of like there are some like really nice homes. Yes.
Okay, Fiona and then Nina.
Also landmarks and the height, like the elevation. So, like in Pacific Heights, it's elevated a lot and it's above a lot of the ground. And it also has the view of the Golden Gate Bridge, which causes it to be a more affluent, like neighborhood.
Okay, Nina.
I was kind of gonna touch on that too, but also like gentrification, how it's like pushing out kind of the natives or like whoever like used to live there, and then it's kind of like rearranging the different zones of the city.
Other factors possibly.
So like more in depth about like how you were talking about like the hills and everything. I think like for, you know, like a place like LA where it's mainly, I mean like in downtown LA is pretty big, but like it's relatively flat if you're like more in the southern part, and that allows for the CBD area to be like more in the center and then it being able to like disperse more. But then for San Francisco, like the hills like kind of make it so then they can't be exact like rings, they like kind of curve around certain hills, as you can see like there, and also like on our map we like kind of had to go like around Nob Hill, and like here's like the Twin Peaks area, and then like you can see how they don't actually, it's not like super like as concentric as it would be if it were flat. And then one other thing, like I think it also really depends on where the downtown is. So in the city it's more like northeast, so then things kind of have to go out this way. But then if it's in the center, then they can spread out more evenly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, geographically, it's obviously never going to be a perfect circle, and a lot of times the downtown of somewhere isn't directly in the middle. But I think it's interesting that even though, like you said, San Francisco's central district is way to the northeast, it still kind of develops in the same way around that.
Jimmy, you
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, we were talking earlier about like Apple headquarters and Google and everything, and they're kind of not even close to the downtown at all. I think it's probably just because their employee base is mainly those people that would live in the suburbs normally, who don't want to commute so much. So like the commuter ring turns into more of a like downtown ring and like more of the inner rings. So then it kind of messes up the way it's structured a bit.
So that will definitely, I'm hoping that the people who are going to talk about 13, whatever. I'm hoping you guys are gonna get into that. Why is it that, you know, suburbs developed residential neighborhoods and as opposed to, you know, places of work? Again, I wanna go back to my question, like, so there's the body of water, right? Bodies of water are definitely gonna affect the concentric, you know, the nice perfect circular shape. Obviously, heights, you know, being able to go up. Are there other reasons, for example, why a circle might develop into an oval? Can you guys think about, are there any reasons why this, what could make the circle suddenly become more like an oval?
Well, if, you know, residential section, a lot of people move in, there's like a lot of immigration or migration, and, you know, the population, you know, the city needs to respond, and, you know, section out and zone places for, you know, people to, you know, live and have residential areas.
Okay, so maybe people move into different places, so they colonize, so there was a circle, but they colonize one end of a circle and then becomes an oval, maybe?
Maybe the increase or decrease of wealth.
Well, not all cities are in this like perfect shape to actually create a circle. So like if a city was like really long, it could be an oval.
Why would it be long? Because again, if you think about that model, right? Those commuters, they have to be able to do what?
Commute.
They have to be able to commute. What do you need in order to commute?
Or public trans.
Car, public transit, right?
BART.
So, BART. So again, if you think about public transit or mass transit, it's called, you know, that includes both like highways, but BART, but bus, but who has the power to change like what can change the shape from the circle to like an oval or long
Roads.
roads? Modes of transportation, right? So when the city puts in a tram, or if a city puts on a railway, right, things are gonna develop along the railway. And so what you're gonna get is you can get like a spidery field, or you can get, because things are gonna develop along the highway, or along the railroad, or along the bus line, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know any city whose roads look like a ring, or like the spokes of a wheel. Like most of the time, cities are grids. So, yeah, I would think that like Erie Boulevard would support San Francisco developing into an oval much more than a ring.
Wasn't Paris like set out in rings?
Kathmandu and Berlin.
If you're in London, it looks like a 2-year-old just went like this.
Yeah.
If you look at how DC grew, for example, DC grew along their subway lines, right? Same way for Boston. So eventually what happens is that you have the spokes of the subway lines, and then those like branch out, and then eventually they fill in, and then you recover that sense of circle, right? Or that sense of mass. But initially, when you start, you know, like in Pennsylvania or in that area of the world where they have train early on, really the cities developed along the railways. And so again, for people who are doing mass transit, right, to think about like the power of mass transit in terms of how it affects the growth of cities. And if you look at a little bit of what happens sort of on a East Bay versus West Bay, right, why is it that the growth of Tiburon was stunted, as it did not grow exponentially forever and ever and ever, whereas, you know, Hayward did, or, right? What was one of those factors that, or you know, Newark, or whatever, like, why is it that their population grew by a factor 20, whereas in, you know, Mill Valley, they didn't grow by a factor 20? What is that about? And it's complicated. There are many, many factors, right? But I want you guys to start thinking about like, how does it all fit in the real world? Like for our cities that are evolving. Like, definitely, concentric movement theory is important. And then how do you modify that to make it fit what we're seeing around us?
I don't know why, but thinking about this kind of brings me back to the podcast about the Bijlmermeer.
Mm-hmm.
How they tried to like build a city out of nothing, like not expanding on anything. But they didn't have district at all. Like they just tried to build some cross between like the commuter zone and the like better residences as like right in the middle, and then they didn't have anything else, and it kind of crashed and burned. Yeah,
Mr. Papp, you've got about 1 minute.
that's
You wanna wrap it up?
that's good because I think we've covered everything.
Cool.
I really apologize.